evolved person, exceptionally intelligent, but generally felt no smarter or no better than others, a little bit like Einstein in that way. So he expected from everyone else the same degree of dedication to problem solving and enhancing collective IQ and collaborating that he had dedicated his life to. He was disappointed first. In his commitment to and desire for human augmentation, Doug was operating in stark contrast to prevailing paradigms that didn't have nearly his faith in humankind. Two prevailing fads in the 60s and beyond were artificial intelligence, which focuses on enhancing the capacity of machines, and technology for the masses that would be easy to learn and natural to use. This later trend was enormously frustrating to Doug, as we all know. He wanted people to augment their intelligence by engaging tools and strategies that were commensurate with the complex problems that threatened to do them in. He was very aware, even as a 25-year-old, that humankind was kind of on a collision course. Doug used the image of the tricycle and the bicycle to illustrate how wrong it was to dumb down technology. Refusing to learn appropriately a sophisticated and mature technology was like choosing a tricycle over a bicycle. He was basically saying, hey kids, it's time to grow up. But the culture chose arrested development. When people rejected Doug's complex but vastly improved tools, it was as if they were saying, no thanks, Doug, the primitive tools are easier. If you're requiring us to scale steep learning curves that require more effort, we would just as soon remain our Neanderthal selves. I think I read that said that Doug was like a god. It may have been in reference to the vastness of Doug's vision, or his achievements, or maybe his deep and pervasive goodness as a person. I concur, though for decades, Doug seemed to me to be more like a prophet, calling in the wilderness, speaking to a deaf and blind world, bearing light, and sad for humanity that it wouldn't take its heed. Doug believed he had a vision and strategies that could save humankind from itself, from its collision course, problems that were coming on with increased complexity, intensity, and speed. He believed that even solutions to problems were generating more problems, and the only way to get ahead was through enhancing our intelligence collectively with smarter tools. Without saying it, Doug believed we could become higher, stronger, smarter, better versions of ourselves. And without knowing it, without ever putting it in those words, Doug indeed took on what I would call, the divine mandate for us all, to be as gods. I believe Doug was one of the immortal souls who took seriously the weight of glory of being a fully alive human being. There are some of the images that come up for me as they relate to Doug and the divine are that he had an exalted view of humankind. He saw its potential for greatness. He ushered in the dawn of interactive computing. He remained invisible for eons in spite of the fact that he created tangible worlds that enhance intelligence. And he lived for humanity as if love were the ultimate reality, as if the work of enhancing and evolving the human species was the most critical work of all. Doug's lifetime pursuit was probably driven as much by a sense of duty as by love. While Doug used the word love at home a lot, I don't think I ever heard him use it once in relationship to what motivated him in his lifetime pursuit. But I don't see how Doug could have persevered in his dream for humankind in the face of such daunting obstacles, in the face of rejection, of losing funding, of having projects he earned taken away from him, of being dismissed, of all the hits he took during his career, if it weren't for his genuine, undying love of the species and of people individually. I think duty drops out, gets disheartened, and exhausted when things get tough, but love never quits. When Einstein discovered and fell in love with Mozart as a way to learn to play the violin, he said love is such a better teacher than duty. And I think that Doug was in love with humankind and all its potentials, and that's what kept him going. Einstein was a cultural icon, too, who, like Doug, bucked conventional thinking and was dismissed when conventional people were in charge. Doug, like Einstein, didn't have the stomach or the instinct for political warfare. He had to overcome political obstacles and press on with his earth-shattering insights in spite of the conventional thinking that was surrounding him. I think it must have been love as much as duty that kept them both going. Doug was such a delight in so many ways on the personal level. I love the complexity, the paradox, the juxtaposition of the man. He was a country boy futurist, a visionary who developed highly sophisticated tools to fix a world full of complex problems, a highly evolved creature who made the world a collectively smarter place, and yet he never stopped referring to himself as a naive country kid. A friend of ours said that country boy futurist sounds a bit like space cowboy. I sometimes did think of Doug as an astronaut with the right stuff who wanted to take us to the stratosphere of our capabilities. Now, on the personal realm, just a few words. Earthworms, organic gardening, sailing, backpacking, beer making, folk dancing, and slingshots. Doug, to me, was physically, socially, temperamentally, creatively, and intellectually adorable. I get to use that word even in serious, hallowed hall of technical sophistication. While you wouldn't use the word, most of you already know that Doug was intellectually adorable. It's why we're all here celebrating him. But there are two small incidents that speak to that and demonstrate that he was already facilitating his own evolution using formative tools and dynamic knowledge repositories that would enhance his knowledge base and facilitate his own evolution. When Doug was young, I think this is particularly adorable. When Doug was young, he memorized the Boy Scout virtues. And later, with me as a grown-up, seizing a teachable moment with children, he would recite them very fast and be very pleased with himself. Trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. They are all so adorable, and they are all so Doug, and I think we can see that why he was an exemplary scout. Equally adorable, in his 30s, he typed up words on one side of note cards with their definition on the other. Apparently, he was testing himself. He was doing iterations. And I thought that you might be interested in some of the vocabulary that he found. It was almost like he was using flashcards, only it was for a very sophisticated, highly educated grown-up. And these are some of the words that he used that I found recently typed on note cards. Very kind of prescient. Feckless crumbling, morphological structures of groups, synergistic, exemplar, elan vital, and finally, anthropocentric. In the time Doug and I were together, he went through seasons of varying degrees of happiness. As I mentioned, for many years, he felt he was in the wilderness, and his frequent refrain to people were, "You just don't get it." But in the later season, it was different. His temperament was characterized by contentment, love of life, and hope. Some of the reasons for his hope was that his desert was becoming to blossom as a rose. People were finally getting it. They were tirelessly working towards the world Doug had in mind. And I want to give a few examples. Peter Yim's work on ontology, Mei Lin's leadership in healthcare at the federal and state level, Bill Dahl's improvement community, Ade Mabugunji's work at Stanford and in India and Africa, Dino Karabek's Knowledge Federation, Jack Park's Knowledge Garden, and finally, Sam Hahn's Program for the Future, continuing work that he had started with Doug at Bootstrap Alliance decades ago. These active, dynamic, international pursuits that are carrying on Doug's legacy, which he was able to work with them on, made him happy. And finally, personally, Doug's affection, goodness, intelligence, quick wit, love of learning and language, playfulness transformed our everyday routines into magical moments. It was a rapturous love all around. He created a force field of domestic tranquility, I'm happy to report, and happiness beyond my wildest dreams. He turned our water into wine. I have said before, Doug inspired more intelligent life, generated more worthy ideas, ignited more glorious, noble, collaborative visions and endeavors than he knew, and he won scores of awards for it. But what I admired and loved about him the most, and what I'm honored to have experienced, was his highly advanced capability of loving us all so well. Thank you.